Here's one for all you megalomaniacs out there. You're so happy Fort Bragg got renamed Fort Bragg after it was renamed Fort Liberty. And it's like, oh boy, isn't that exciting? Nobody seems to fucking care. It's all part of the distractive process. And I'm going to tell you, I'm happy that it got changed back to Fort Bragg because every time I was sitting there under a helicopter with Pure Legend, he would say, "They're coming to take you back to Bragg, Archie." And I go, because I liked the idea. It was straight out of Rambo with Colonel Troutman saying, "They're coming. We're going to take you back to Bragg, Archie." Or Rambo, Johnny. Uh, there it is. It made me happy to hear Bragg, taking you back to Bragg. They've renamed it. So when it comes time that they need to lock me up somewhere, they're not taking me into custody in a place called Liberty. They're going to take me back into Bragg. The funny thing is, when we went into Saudi and Iraq with Major Temple was my officer in charge at the time. The one before that was Major Jefferson Davis. There's another name in there. They all have three names for some reason when they're from the South and they're officers. Why it is so many officers in the military come from the South, I don't know. Are they up to something? Major Jefferson Davis, he stayed in the rear with the gear. He became executive officer of the battalion after he left being my officer in charge. And he was never anybody I would have wanted to go to war with anyway. He was one of these guys that was a self-righteous prick as far as I could tell. So I was glad to go with Major Temple, who ended up running the Army Corps of Engineers, who he was a major general, possibly a lieutenant general from what I see on his things. The last time I talked to him, he didn't have cancer, but he died of it. And is it because of the stuff we breathed over there? I don't know. I seem to be doing quite well. But Major Jefferson Davis in the rear with the gear, when all the medals were handed out, I got an ARCOM, which is a good enlisted medal to get, and I deserved it. But they give stars out to officers, and so Major Jefferson Davis in the rear with the gear, he got a silver star. People talked about it and they complained. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. It's not mine. But when you look at how they renamed Fort Liberty Fort Bragg again, you think all these people down there, old guys that I was in the military, they were mad about it being named Liberty, and I agreed with it. It was junky, and it didn't fit my joke about me being taken back to Bragg. But they complain about it. And then this Hegseth fuck, he comes in, he's, look at that. We renamed it Fort Liberty again, or Bragg again. But the thing is, by him renaming it Fort Bragg again, he made a caveat. He talked about it. He says, it's named after this guy. I looked him up. He was in the 513th Airborne, and they couldn't tell you which station he was posted out of because it didn't become real until like 1943 to 1945. And I'm not saying anything against this private first class, an E3 Bragg. I'm not saying anything bad against him. It because he got a silver star and a purple heart. Well, they just renamed it after somebody that didn't even have a Wikipedia site until the day he signed those papers. Nobody ever heard of this fucking guy. And he got a silver star and a Purple Heart. Major Jefferson Davis got a silver star. And if he'd have just cut his finger, got a paper cut somewhere, he would have had a Purple Heart too in the rear with the gear. You're going to rename a fucking post? I guess it makes sense to name some guy that never really got any respect at all. What lieutenant has the kind of respect it takes to become a goddamn newscaster and then the Secretary of Defense? I don't know. The thing is, if they really wanted to rename Fort Bragg, they shouldn't have had some fucking leg motherfucker doing it. And they shouldn't have named it after somebody that nobody ever heard of just because he had the same name as the guy that had it before. If they wanted to rename Fort Liberty after having renamed it from Fort Bragg, they shouldn't have gone back to Bragg. They could have gone back to Leslie H. Sable, first of the 506th Band of Brothers, a heroic fucking unit that somebody could decide where they came from. If they wanted to name it after somebody, they should have at least named it after somebody that had a goddamn Congressional Medal of Honor, not somebody with a silver star. If they wanted somebody with a Purple Heart, they could have picked my cousin Bernie across the road. They could have named it Fort Elderquist. I mean, at least Bernie across the road walking out of Vietnam still walks with shrapnel in his body that they couldn't get out. If you want to rename something, don't rename it after some PFC that got a guy with the rear and the gear in the rear type of fucking award. Nothing against Roland PFC, Roland E3. Nothing against Roland Bragg, but it just seems like they picked him out of a goddamn funeral book. They just picked a name because it fit. All you megalomaniacs out there, pay attention to how this is. You didn't get your Braxton Bragg back. You got Roland. You got an E3. If he'd have fucking saved lives like a hero, he'd be carrying a goddamn Congressional Medal of Honor on him. They could have named it Fort Elderquist out of Bernie across the street. Bernie doesn't care. He walks with shrapnel. He walks with the memories of fucking fighting for this country. He doesn't live on through somebody just trying like hell to find somebody with a name.